Hey friends, welcome to Whiskey and Whit. I'm Whitney, and today's video is going to be some of my favorite Dollar Tree DIYs for Christmas that I've ever done to get you started on some holiday inspiration, so stay tuned. I started my channel back in 2018, so I've got 2 cycles of Christmas content here, and I wanted to share some of these because a lot of you weren't around when I posted a lot of these, but they are still awesome projects with items that you can find at the Dollar Tree year after year. I will leave links down below in the description box to all of the full videos, so let's get started. All of the links for these projects will be down below, so you can check out the original video if you want to see these a little bit slower. But we're going to kick it off with these patent print ornaments. What you're going to need is some foam board, some 4x6 thick canvases, and also some free printables to put inside your signs. Step 1 is to disassemble your canvases. So it's really easy. Just take a screwdriver, pop out the staples, and then you can remove the canvas from the outside. So once you have your wood frame, you're going to sand it off because they can be a little rough. And then I decided to stain them with dark walnut Minwax stain, but you could honestly use paint. You could use whatever color stain that you want. You could leave them natural if you really wanted to. So there's a lot of different options to match your decor here. And then once those were dry, I went through and traced them on the foam board, and I decided to take every frame and trace it separately because the way that the Dollar Tree canvases are, they aren't all perfect rectangles every time. So I just went and traced them so I knew they would fit inside each frame. Then I took my cut foam pieces and traced them around my printables so that I could cut them down. I ended up printing them the size of the canvas, but they needed to be a little bit smaller to fit on the foam core. Then I attached those printables to the foam core with just a little bit of Mod Podge. You could also use a glue stick. And then I popped them into the frame so that they fit snug. If yours don't fit snug, you can hot glue them in. And then I added some jute twine with some hot glue. You could also use a staple gun to finish off the look. You could put whatever you want inside the frame. You could also do pictures, which would be super cute. And I love that they are a great size for your tree, that they kind of make a statement, and you can also put them on presents. Up next is this Rustic bulb strand, and it is so simple and quick and easy to make, and it really stands out on a green tree. So you're going to take one of these Dollar Tree light up necklaces, take some painter's tape and tape the little ends, and then go through with some chalk paint, and I ended up doing 3 coats so you can't see through to the color. And that's it. I strung them on my mini trees, and I love that it gives kind of a vintage and farmhouse look. If you're looking for a different take on some glassware for the holidays, these are awesome. They're faux wood vases. So I just took different size vases from the Dollar Tree and grabbed my glue gun to create some tree bark looking shapes. So I ended up pulling up a picture on Pinterest so that I could kind of follow it, but I just freehanded it. And honestly, if I can draw this, so can you. I'm not a good freehander. But just go through and design whatever you want on there. Also be careful of the little like hairs from the glue gun, the little stringies, because you're gonna want to pull those off before you paint it, because if not, then it will look kind of funny. Once both vases were ready to go, I took them outside, used some nice white spray paint. I don't recommend the 97-cent kind from Walmart for this project. This was like $2.98, and I gave both of them 2 coats, and that's it. You could also add some glitter if you want a little more glam look, and you could really change up whatever greenery you want in there for either the holidays or just the winter. This bell door hanger was one of my favorite things I made as part of 12 Days of Christmas last year, so let me show you how I did it. Here are all of the supplies that you're going to need, and the only thing that's not Dollar Tree is that ribbon, which you could absolutely grab some Dollar Tree ribbon. This is just what I had on hand. So step 1 was to disassemble the other bell door hanger that I had and remove the silver string from the outside, so I just had the circle. Then I went through and pulled apart the bells because you want to be able to get to the top of the bell so you can re-hook the hanger. So went through, pulled out all the evergreen pieces and all of the strings, and then I took all of those apart because I thought they were a little too big for what I wanted to do. And then it was time to restring the handle. So I just took some Dollar Tree jute twine and some hot glue and fed it all the way around the handle until it was completely covered. So then I cut my jute twine at 3 different lengths so my bells would not sit evenly, which is what I wanted. So I did 3 pieces in a section, and I did 2 sections at 28 inches, 2 sections at 32 inches, and 1 section at 36 inches. I strung my 3 pieces per length through the bell, and then I went through and braided them. I liked the braid because of the look, but I also liked it because it made the strand stronger to bring everything together. So this is just a regular braid, and I went through and did that to every single bell with each length. So then that way I had 5 bells at varying lengths that I could attach to the handle. Then I took all 5 of the bells and I arranged them the way that I wanted to. Another thing that you can do, which I did here to keep those strands from unraveling while you're moving them around, is put some tape on the end, just so then that way it holds those pieces together so they don't unravel. Then I took each piece one by one and tied it to the handle. Once everything was attached, I wrapped some more jute twine around the knots just to kind of cover it up and give it a finished look. And then I added some regular burlap ribbon as well as some black buffalo check ribbon to make it look a little bit more full. And then you could leave it like that, or I decided to reattach some of the greenery and the ribbon. So I attached the burlap bows back to each one. Then I also reattached 1 sprig of the greenery and a little pine cone. Before it had 2 sprigs of greenery and a pine cone, and that was just a little too full for me. So I took some of the extra greenery and attached it to the handle along with an extra pine cone. And here's what it looks like when it's all done. I think it's a really fun use for those Dollar Tree bells. They have them year after year, and I had a ton at my house and I didn't know what to do with them, so this was a great use. Up next is this faux metal bucket, and I recently made this for Christmas in July and I absolutely love it. So this one started with a plastic trash can from Dollar Tree, obviously. And then I took it outside first and gave it 2 coats of flat white paint. This allowed me to cover up the blue. If you're using a white trash bin, you won't have to worry about that, but the only one I could find was blue, so I wanted to neutralize that base color. Then I took some gray Waverly chalk paint and went through using a makeup sponge and went through and dabbed the gray paint on to give yourself a base coat. This is how you're gonna build that galvanized metal look. I also made sure to do it on the inside, just a little bit below the lip, so then that way, if you were looking at the front, it looked like the whole bucket was metal. So then the next step is to take a darker gray paint, and this is just an acrylic one I had in my stash, and I then went through and did the same process, but with that darker metal to really give it that pounded metal look. And so you're going to want to make sure that you're putting paint on, but that you don't have any thick areas. And also it looks nice if some areas are thicker than others because it gives it that kind of uneven metal look. The final step is to do that same process about halfway with some metallic gray paint. And I just like that because when the light hits it, it gives it a little bit of a sheen versus like what a plastic would look like. And then I also added some nutmeg brown just with my finger so that it looked like it was rusted at the top and the bottom. Then I wanted to add a stencil similar to what you see on the ones that you could spend a bajillion dollars on. And so I just cut this out on some cardstock on my Cricut just so then that way I didn't have to stick a stencil and risk ripping off all that paint I just painted. I used a stencil font, and that helped because then I knew there weren't going to be any inside pieces that I had to worry about laying down. And then I just went through with some red chalk paint, used the up and down dabbing method so it didn't smear, and covered all of the letters. The last step that I did was add some handles, so I just took some nautical rope that Dollar Tree sells and I glued on each piece. And here is the finished look. Now let's do a different way that you can use those patent prints. I found these frames that were not super my style. They were brown. So I went through with some Waverly chalk paint, covered the frame, so then that way they were white to match my Christmas decor, but you could do whatever color matches your decor. Then once it was dry, I went through, roughed it up a little bit with some sandpaper, and then I added my prints. I just printed them out in black and white on regular printer paper, added them to the frame, taped them down so they stayed within the mat where I wanted them to, and that is it. These look super high end. You can put them all over your house within different vignettes, and nobody would guess they came from Dollar Tree. I love this take on the classic Dollar Tree LED candle to make it look like birch wood. So I started with a Dollar Tree LED candle. If you wanted a bigger one, you could absolutely use one you bought at another location. This is just the size Dollar Tree sells. You're going to be careful and take something sharp. You can use razor blade or a straight edge or something, and go through and puncture the candle so that it looks like birch wood. So straight lines, squiggly lines, half moon lines. I even tried to work in some like knotted wood so that it looked authentic. So then I took some nutmeg brown acrylic paint and I used a brush to kind of really get it into the grooves, because you want it to kind of seep into the areas that you just cut. So then that way the underneath looks brown. So I put it on there and then I wiped it off once it was all kind of really seeped in there. And so then that way when you wipe it off, all you're really seeing are the lines. Those lines really stand out. So then I just took a mixture of white and gray paint and I put it on the candle. And when I first did it, I put way too much. So let me be a guide to you. You're going to want to dry brush versus like actually brushing over the top. But if you end up putting too much paint on, you can just wipe it off with the paper towel like you did with the brown paint. But then you really have those lines seep through, but the candle looks white. It's super forgiving. If you end up having an issue, you can go back through and redo it. Then to finish off the look, I just added some jute twine around the top, and then I added a little ornament embellishment from Walmart, and then a couple little cedar sprigs that I cut off of a wreath that I had. This is one of those projects that is awesome for the winter when Christmas is over and you need some seasonal decor, but you don't want that red Christmas vibe. This is where it's at. So make it now, leave it out for the whole season well into January and February. You'll thank me later. Next up, let's make some canvas scroll ornaments. You're going to need some more of those 4x6 canvases and then also some large craft sticks. So start off by covering your craft sticks. I use my favorite stain here, but again, you could use paint or whatever stain color that you want. And you're going to need 2 per ornament. So depending on how many you're making, you will just need multiples of 2. And this is a great project to use the canvas from those ornaments at the beginning of the video. So then I went through and just cut out the square that was already there. You just cut out the edges that wrap around the canvas. Then I went through and measured and cut down my popsicle sticks so then I could get flat ends instead of rounded ends. Then I used a fun little phone hack to hand draw some lettering on there. So I just went through Pinterest, found what I wanted it to say, and then I put my canvas on top of my screen. I made sure that my brightness was turned all the way up, and I kind of just used it as a light pad to get that wording on there. Went through with a pen, and then I finished with a Sharpie, and then I finished off the back by adding some hot glue and jute twine so that I could hang it on my tree. These also double really well as present toppers, so it's a nice way to give a DIY gift and also make your present look super put together. I don't know about you, but I love myself a fun Christmas countdown, especially now with Finn. This will be so fun to use. So I made this out of a Dollar Tree pizza pan, and I decided that it was a little too shiny for my liking, so I went through and took some just gray paint and sponge brushed it on there. Then I took this little Dollar Tree truck ornament and some Dollar Tree magnets from Crafter Square, put it on the back, so then that way that can be how we count down the days till Christmas. Then I cut out a countdown to Christmas saying on my Cricut, and I put that on top of my pan. Now, I did not seal the pan before I put the stickers down, and I would highly recommend it. So I would spray it with a polyacrylic or do a water-based sealer over the top that will seal your paint in. So then that way when you go to stick the sticker on the paint, you won't have the issue that I did. Then I cut the number 1 through 25, and I placed those evenly around the pizza pan. Now, I plan to hang this somewhere in our house, so I'll figure out how to hang that. But you could also add something to the back to have it sit up, so then your kids can go through and move the little truck and count down to Christmas. You could also make a variation of this for countdowns to birthdays, countdowns to other holidays, so there are a lot of different options with this pizza pan sign. Here is a quick and easy idea for a fabric or jute cord tree. So I grabbed a variety of different elements from the Dollar Tree to make these. I've got some nautical rope and their fleece scarves. And I grabbed a little tree decoration here, and I also grabbed a foam cone from the floral section. So for the trees that I'm using the little red pieces, I'm going to cut them and remove all of the sparklers from the outside, so I'm left with just the inside base. Then take your scarves and cut some long strips so you can wrap those around the tree. And then starting at the bottom using some hot glue, I started with one end of the buffalo check fabric, and then I just worked my way up the tree, making sure that I used hot glue as I went so it laid down exactly where I wanted it to sit. I did the same process on my other tree, removed all of the red, and then I just used the nautical rope to wrap it around the top. This gives kind of a coastal Christmas vibe, also just a neutral Christmas vibe, also a Scandinavian Christmas. So a lot of those color neutral Christmases, this tree would look really cute with that. Another idea is filling out the tree with leaf shapes. So I took my black and white scarf and cut out leaf shapes, and then I went through and glued them all around the cone. So then that way it kind of gave it a 3D textured look. And then at the top, I made sure everything kind of came together at the center. And then I pulled off any extra little glue strings. So these trees are super easy to make. You could definitely display them all together or just use one. You could do them all the same color. There are a ton of different options with these, but the bases at Dollar Tree under some of those sparkly signs are awesome for DIYs. Mercury glass is usually huge for the holidays, but it typically is pretty expensive, so I'm going to show you how I DIY'd it. So I took some hot glue sticks from Gorilla Glue to glue my items together. I prefer that better than E6000 personally, and a stencil that I cut out from my Cricut. So I used those glue sticks to hook a Dollar Tree candlestick to a hurricane glass vase, and then I attached my little Christmas scene stencil to it. Now you don't have to worry about the bubbles as much as your edges being pushed down. So just FYI, if the circular surface is giving you a really hard time sticking a stencil down. So then I took some Rust-Oleum Mirror Effect spray paint and just a bottle of a little bit of vinegar and water. And this is how you DIY Mercury glass. So I went through and spritzed the water mixture onto my container, and then I took that mirror effect and sprayed just up to my stencil. I didn't want it at the top. Basically, I wanted the Mercury glass to start at the bottom and work its way up through the little scenery that I created. Then once everything's on there, you take a paper towel and you kind of pop the bubbles that were created by the water, and that gives you that mirrored effect. You're going to want to repeat this step about 3 to 4 more times, and that will give you that really pretty Mercury glass look. Now, after you spray it a few times with the water, your stencil is going to get kind of loose, but that's okay. It makes it really easy to take it off. And then I just used a little razor blade to pull off any of the little pieces from the stencil that I wasn't able to peel off. I love this little scene. I worked in a little lab for Sebastian. I love those little nods to our family within our decor that I've DIY'd. Then you can just plop in a little tea light candle, and it looks really beautiful. Even at night, you can see the little silhouette of the scene on the wall. I love it. It's super cozy, and this I'm definitely going to make more for this year. Another thing you can do with those LED candles is decoupage them. So I did a set with these really cute napkins. I found these at Joann's, but you could definitely use some Dollar Tree napkins or Walmart or whatever you've got on hand. And it's so simple. You're going to take your candle and measure it on your napkin. I went through and made sure that my napkin was fully laid out, and then I marked it and cut it. So then that way I had a strip that would cleanly lay on top of the candle. Then I just took some Mod Podge, spread it around the candle, and then I rolled the piece of napkin onto it. It is going to give it a nice little kind of wrinkled crinkle effect, which I think goes really well with kind of the vintage look of this car. And the last step is to just take some jute twine after everything is sealed and tie it off on the top to kind of finish off the look. And it's so easy, but it makes such an impact. I also took the little tartan print and cut out strips of that to do the top and the bottom. These look super cute together, and they glow really well at night. You can still see, especially if you've got a white napkin, the design through that orange light, which I love. Here's a fun project you can do with felt, and so many of the Dollar Trees by me are now carrying more and more colors of felt, which is awesome. If not, you can grab it at Michael's, but for this one you're going to need red, black, a tree green, a brown, and a white, as well as your glue gun and some stuffing to stuff your truck. So I went online and found a picture of a truck and printed it to the size that I wanted to make mine. Then I cut it out and used it as a stencil, so then that way I kind of had a guide. I first tried to freehand it and I cannot draw, so I don't know what I was thinking. So I decided to go through and cut it and trace it myself. Once that first piece of red felt was cut, then I used some painter's tape to stick another piece of felt to it and then trimmed it again, so then that way I had two pieces. And then I took glue similar to how you would make a hot glue pillow and just went around the outside and glued the two pieces together. And then once I got to the end, I left a little space open big enough for my hand so that I could put some stuffing inside of the truck base. Then it was time to move on to the tree that came out of the back of the truck. So I just eyeballed this as to what size I needed. And then I folded the felt over and cut a tree similar to like you would cut hearts in grade school. And then I took that same approach that I did with the red truck and cut a second piece and glued it together and then stuffed it with some stuffing. And I took my little Cricut weeding tool to make sure that I got my stuffing up into each of the crevices. Then I took my truck stencil piece of paper and cut it up into smaller pieces so then I could use those as stencils. I cut off the wheels and the little like hubcap covers and any other piece that I needed a stencil to help me cut out so that it would be true to size. Including the back little area for the tree to fit into. I used my little pieces so that I knew how wide those little wood pieces needed to be. Then once I had all my pieces, I glued everything on and assembled the truck, including the back little wood pieces over the tree. And then to finish it off, I added a little bit more felt and just some Christmas lights, which I cut out of some scrap felt that I had around my house. They're not perfect shapes, but I cut little ovals and it makes my tree look super festive. Overall, this was probably about an hour and a half project, and it would be a great one to do while you're sitting and binging Netflix. Now, if you guys have been around for a while, you know that I am obsessed with Christmas Vacation for the holidays, and so I want to make these tiered trade signs. Dollar Tree has a ton of different options when it comes to signs like this, so I keep my eyes peeled, and when I find them, I just buy a decent amount of them, and then I have them in my stash to craft with. So they come apart super easy, so you just put a little bit of pressure on the front of the sign and the back should pop off. And I do that so then that way I don't have to do as much taping when I go to paint my signs. So I popped that back off, and then I painted a few of them white. I painted some of them red. You could paint them black, really whatever color you want to paint the outside. Even if it already is white, I found that the Dollar Tree signs get beat up pretty good, so I just cover it again so it looks clean and crisp white. And then the backgrounds, I did a white and then a black background. So I've got two signs with a white background and one sign with a black background to look like a chalkboard. I designed and cut out some different cut files of my favorite sayings from Christmas Vacation and stuck them to the back. And then I reassembled the sign with some hot glue. This final step is optional, but I thought it finished it off quite nicely. I measured my signs I measured and cut some Dollar Tree buffalo check wrapping paper, and then I just Mod Podged it to the back of the sign so that they looked finished. So in case I put that on my table or something where you were going to see the back, it didn't look as unfinished. And here they are. Designed the blessing one, and the other two were free downloads, which I will link for you. Also be sure to check out this full video because there are a ton of other Christmas Vacation inspired projects. I think I have about 1 million sets of these Farmhouse book stacks, and I just can't get enough. I just love them for every season. You just grab some Dollar Tree books. You want some that are all the same size, at least the same width. They can be different thickness, and then you paint them white with Waverly chalk paint. Also, while you're at it, you want to make sure that you paint the edges because depending on how you display it, you'll be able to see that. Once everything is dry, I stack up my books and pick the prettiest top to be the top book. I just use some stamps from Michael's to put the wording that I wanted on there, which is "O Holy Night." And then I finished off the look by using a little bit of red and white baker's twine. I wrap it just like a present to keep my books together. You could also hot glue them if you would like. And then I display them with some cute little farmhouse beads. This next one is a Pinterest-inspired farmhouse quote scroll, and this is also super easy to put together. I thought it was going to be a lot harder, but it really wasn't. I took some dowel rods and glued them together so that I could weigh down the ends. Then I took some craft paper and rolled it up just like a scroll. And I ended up holding the edges with some paper clips just so it would stick where I wanted it to. Then I also used some tape to keep everything in place, and then I hot glued my long dowel rod in the bottom just so that it would hang straight and have some weight at the bottom. Then I went through with a free SVG file that I found online and cut out this "O Holy Night" saying. And then I used some paper transfer tape from Expressions Vinyl that I absolutely love to transfer it. The key here is to stick it to a lot of things before you stick it on the vinyl, so then it's sticky enough to pick up your vinyl, but it's not going to rip your craft paper. You could also do stencils, or if you're good at hand lettering, go ahead and do that, but that is not my forte, so I decided to go with the Cricut option. Then I went line by line, lined it up, and stuck it down, and then completed that with my entire saying all the way down the sign. And this is what it looks like. These are all over Pinterest for a ton of money, so it is awesome that I was able to DIY it with Dollar Tree supplies. Just like those farmhouse books, this is something that I do for every season as well, and it's these Ray Dunn inspired candles. So I grabbed a red and a green candle from Dollar Tree, and then I used the free downloadable font, The Skinny, which I'll link down below, and I cut out words that I liked to match the season. So I did Fa La La and Christmas Magic. I cut those out, sized to my particular candle, and applied it to both of them, and that is seriously it. You could also use a white chalk marker to write it out yourself. If you don't have a Cricut, that's a really easy thing to do. You could also use stickers. There's a lot of different options, but I think these are super functional and pretty. These are an awesome project to DIY and customize with your kids, and they're these elevated snow globes. You can really put whatever you want inside of and make a really custom scene. So I used these wishing jars. These were available last year, but you could definitely use any of the mason jars that they currently have. They have ball mason jars right now. And I also grabbed an assortment of the little miniatures in their Christmas Village line, as well as some of their baker's twine. Also, an interesting way to do some faux snow is use some Epsom salt bath, and I really like that consistency versus the Dollar Tree fake snow. So step one is to hook your candlestick to the lid of your mason jar and then fill the mason jar itself with some of that Epsom salt. Then take your little miniatures and arrange your scene on the lid. So then that way you have everything where it needs to go. And I used hot glue to just stick them down, so then that way they wouldn't move when I went to add the snow. Then the last step is to take your base, flip it over, get it all situated inside of your jar, and then you can lightly flip it over. And once you do that, you can kind of give it a little shake and all of your snow will fall to the bottom of your snow globe. I also added these cute little tags to mine because they came with those wishing jars, but you can use some of Dollar Tree's tags that they have in Crafter's Square if you don't have a jar that already has it on there. Dollar Tree has some amazing gift bags, not only for wrapping, but also for DIYing. I liked this scene, and so I wanted to use it to make a reverse canvas. I took an 8x10 Dollar Tree canvas and disassembled it, so then that way I took the canvas off the outside and then I was left with the wood inside frame. I stained it with my absolute favorite stain that I've been using this whole video, which is Minwax Dark Walnut. And then I just traced the bag, gave it a quick cut, and hot glued the bag piece to the back of the frame. And here's the finished product, super quick and easy. And you could also do this with a smaller frame with greeting cards. There's a ton of different options there. These Farmhouse Bells I made for the corner of my little greenery around my front door, and I love them. They're so easy to create. I took some of these plastic bells from the Dollar Tree, disassembled them, so I took off that greenery and the bow, and then I just went through and painted the outside and the inside 3 coats with Waverly chalk paint. You can also distress them if you would like to. Then after they're dry, go through and add some jute twine to hang your bells. And then I finished off the look with some cute burlap ribbons, and they could be really cute on trees. They're really cute on hanging on garland, and you could also sit them on a table just like this as a vignette. And finally, lucky number 20 is this cute ornament sign. So Dollar Tree has these ornament signs every year. I grabbed another gift bag because I thought this one was beautiful. I grabbed some jute twine and also some Mod Podge from the Dollar Tree to complete this project. So the first thing to do is disassemble your ornament sign. So pop off that little hanger, flip your sign over because you're going to work on the back, and cut out your gift bag. Then trace your sign on top of your gift bag and cut it out, and then use some Mod Podge to apply it to the sign. Also, once it's applied to the sign, take some Mod Podge and put it over the top. That will help all of that glitter from getting all over your house. Then glue back on the top, and then to cover that little gap, I made a bow out of some burlap ribbon that I had from Hobby Lobby, but you could absolutely use Dollar Tree ribbon. They have some gorgeous Christmas ribbon this year. Glue it on the top there, and then cut the ends to make it look finished, and you're all set. And you can use this sign on its own, or you can hang it inside of a wreath to finish off that look.
Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to let me know your favorite project down in the comments below, and also give this video a thumbs up if you like crafting for Christmas. Hit subscribe so you don't miss a future Whiskey and Whit video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!